It's so interesting.
It's so interesting.
It's so interesting.
interesting.
It's interesting. It's so interesting.
Okay. Welcome to It's So Interesting, where people talk about their work and life experience. I am George Spitzer, and today I'm talking with Andrew Lockwood, the wildlife trapper, who is licensed by the state of California. Okay, let's get right to it. How did you find out that this is what you like doing?
The construction industry in the gutter, like it's been for several years, I was just sort of trying to adapt and find new things to do. And a friend of mine that's in a pest control company asked if I would go out and collect dead animals from him, from customers complaining of dead rats and things of that nature in the wall. And one day I went out for a dead skunk call, and found that there was a live one down in there, and had to trap and remove him. And at that point, I just sort of fell in love with the business, and started looking into it and obtained my license, and have been at it ever since.
Now, I'm curious, how did you find that your career is in animal trapping? What aspect of it was attractive to you?
Well, definitely the outdoor, being in the outdoors is big for me. I don't like to sit behind a desk. I enjoy helping people a lot, and believe it or not, the people that get these problems, these animals are making them miserable, and it really makes me feel good to be able to step in and help them out with that. Another big thing for me was that there just wasn't a lot of people doing it, and especially not a lot of people doing it properly. And I have a great pride in my business. I have a real passion for sticking to the rules and following all the rules to a T. So, I'm under a magnifying glass at all times, so I have to be very careful with my actions and how I'm running the business.
This means that you can't, as you said, you can't rely on your customers to call you to say the trap door is closed. You actually have to drive to the site every single day?
Yes, get out of my truck, put my own eyeballs on that trap, and make sure that there's no animals in that trap, because they have to be checked within 24 hours. And the other thing is, I get a lot of customers that say, well, why don't I just call you as soon as I catch something? But the reason that the fishing game made that law was because, little old ladies were just completely forgetting, and letting the animals perish in the traps, and that's the last thing we want to do.
As I gather, you're trapping animals because it resolves problems with your customers, which of course are humans.
Correct.
However, from an animal's point of view, being trapped, it seems obvious that it's not a good idea to be trapped, but at the same time, I've heard people tell me it's none of their business to be in your house. So could you sort of take the animal's position on this and tell me what you think?
Yes, from the animal's view, number one, it's illegal to use leg hold traps in California, so we're not using any type of body gripping or painful traps to them. They're all hav-a-hart brand traps, which means it's a cage trap where they step inside and they set the trigger off and the door slams and locks behind them. The traps are tarped to keep them nice and cool and calm when I approach the trap. Plenty of food in the trap for them, and like I said, I never let them go further than 24 hours, so I check on them immediately. That's the most humane way to deal with them. And then as far as the aspect of having to euthanize the animal, to me, from a biologist standpoint, it's better for them as a whole to be thinned down and be kept in check, because left to their own devices, they get out of control, and then Mother Nature steps in and deals them, mange and canine distemper and rabies, and that's just, ugly and not good at all. But I believe that I'm really doing them a service by stepping in and removing and thinning them down. We all love these animals. They're great for the environment, but what's not great for the environment is when they get out of control and out of hand. And there's enough animals out there that me stepping in and helping individual customers deal with their problems, it really does not affect them in a negative way. And if like I said, if anything, it's doing them a favor.
Which brings an interesting idea. If people are concerned about trapping and killing animals such as raccoons, which are generally regarded as cute as long as you don't get close to them, saving 2 or 3, does that make much sense against 20,000 wild ones?
Not at all, not at all.
Are there any alternative ways of taking care of the raccoon overpopulation besides trapping them?
None that I know of.
I want to better understand when you say trapping. Of course, trapping can mean all sorts of things. The common idea is the hav-a-hart trap you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
The animal's caught in it, then what?
then I have to show up, and removing is another nice word for euthanizing. And the definition of euthanization means quick, painless, and lights out. My method of euthanization is the CO2 gas chamber. I take the trap and I take them out to my truck, and on my truck I have a box with a lid that's connected to a CO2 gas tank, and I place the animal gently inside the box. He's in the trap and he can't get out, so I set him in the trap, and it's nice and dark in there, and I close the lid. It's nice and quiet, and then I just give him a nice slow dose of the gas until he becomes woozy and passes out from it, and then the CO2 takes the oxygen out of their lungs, and they perish from it.
Do you like animals?
Oh, I just love them, Georgia. I've been an outdoors person since I was a little kid. My dad turned me on to it, and I've been hunting and fishing and camping and backpacking and enjoying the outdoors my entire life.
A very sensitive subject, skunks.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe how many times I'm smelling skunks. Tell me a bit about the Santa Barbara skunk problem.
Skunks are very interesting animals. Just a beautiful little creature. Normally, the worst part of the season for me is always the mating season, which is early fall. You get these females that just want absolutely nothing to do with the males, and they will do everything they can to get away from them. And that's when you start getting them under the house, and they'll climb under your house, or they'll dig up underneath your shed, and basically they'll back up under there, and they're trying to hide from these males. And anywhere from 1 to 50 males will come during the night and try to mate with this gal, and they'll start to fight, and they'll spray each other, and the males will come across the other males, and they're grumpy and full of testosterone. My record is 72 skunks from underneath one house. The skunk is the #1 rabies carrier in California. Having them in numbers like that is dangerous on all levels. Having 1 or 2 in the area is not a big deal, but when you start seeing them during the day, they're running out of food, they're running out of shelter, and it's bad news for them. It really is.
On one hand, it sounds like you're saying you're doing the animal breed a favor by reducing so many of a kind, because then those who are remaining have a better chance of survival. Mm-hmm. At the same time, they're mixing with humans in civilized neighborhoods. I presume there's a balance to that. You say you like animals, you love animals. I assume you have some pets, maybe even at home.
Sure.
But killing so many animals day in and day out, and you love this job, is this job still satisfying?
Well, and that's the difference between me and just your average animal lover that probably wouldn't be able to handle this job. Like I said, I've had a background in hunting. I'm not very squeamish, and I know deep in my heart that this is the best thing for them, is to be thinned down. So think of them as an animal group, not an individual animal. The trapping and the euthanization part, it's only a fraction of what my job entails. I'm all about prevention. I would never just set up a bunch of traps and take out 50, 60 animals and then not get rid of the situation, which is, at that point I would climb under the house. Once I get rid of all the animals and can actually get under the house safely, I'll get under there and I'll remove all the dead critters. I'll remove all the feces. I'll remove all the downed insulation. I'll remove anything that's not nailed down, and then spray everything down with bleach and water, which kills and erases the pheromones, which will continue to attract the animals. If I was to just pick up and leave, it would be a constant flow. So I break that flow by thinning the animals down that are in the area, making it safe to get under the house and clean it out. And then once you remove the attractant, which is, the animals and the animal smell.
Well, you're talking about customers. Those are customers who've called you for your services.
Correct.
There are also, I presume, people who are neighbors who would prefer to shoot or trap you. How do you work that out?
Yeah, I just kill them with kindness. I mean, there's absolutely no reason for me to argue with these people. I'm completely within the law. I'm, like I said, I'm licensed. I'm insured. I'm not breaking any rules. I'm following the rules to a T. So, and I know I run into a lot of people that have a lot of different views than me, and to each his own. That's what I believe.
If you got sprayed by a skunk, what is it that you, in your experience and in your professional opinion, recommend to be done?
Everybody always has the old wives' tale about the tomato juice bath. It works, but what's in the tomato juice is the vinegar. And when I get sprayed, it's usually on my arm where I'm carrying the trap, or they'll spray me up the back. And if I get actual skunk spray on any part of my skin, I'll use just paper towels that I can throw away, and I soak them in vinegar, in white vinegar, and I use the white vinegar, and it kills the smell. It wipes it right off. It breaks through the oil and breaks it down and removes it properly. When you're dealing with dogs, though, it's actually an actual mixture of like hydrogen peroxide and baking soda and the vinegar, and that action will actually pull it out of their fur, which is the safest way to deal with it. Or you can take them to the vet and have them de-skunked, but I mean that's extremely expensive.
What else have you caught without intending to catch?
During the last fires, believe it or not, in Montecito, I was catching California gray foxes and fairly regularly, and I caught several of them, and they are just a gorgeous animal and definitely a non-target animal. And you couldn't pay me to hurt them. I had to let them go. So I just immediately released them upon catching them, and boy, talk about a gorgeous animal.
What qualifications or characteristics would you advise someone to have if they're thinking of becoming an animal trapper themselves?
Definitely a respect for the laws, because like I said, you can very quickly become in trouble if you're not like I said, following those guidebooks and those guidelines to a T. Definitely don't want to be squeamish, because I've crawled in, my job takes me into some horrible situations where there's not much room to crawl around. Definitely don't want to be claustrophobic. I've crawled into places where I've actually had to dig myself out of, and actually thought I might be stuck under there and, might have to start calling for help, things of that nature.
And I should point out for the radio audience that you are over 6 foot.
That's right, yeah. I'm not a small guy, but definitely got a big heart, and I feel that I'm fairly brave, and I've been called that before. I'll jump into any situation, just as long as everybody around me is going to be safe,
Thank you very much, Andy, for being with me.
Thank you, George.
For contact information, go to itssointeresting.com.
It's so interesting.
It's so interesting.
So
It's so
interesting.
interesting.
It's interesting.